Memoir rule number 2, as per Marion Roach Smit in her book, The Memoir Project, is that every page in your memoir needs to drive one story forward. So what does that mean? Hello, I'm Brenda, and in this video we're looking at Memoir rule number 2 as per Marion Roach Smit in her book, The Memoir Project. In my previous video, we discussed rule number 1, which is that writing memoir is about telling the truth. So do be sure to watch that video. And rule number 2 is that every page must drive one single story forward. So what does Marion Roach Smit mean when she says that? Look at the end of the statement, one single story forward. Very often as memoir writers, we have so much in our life that we want to illustrate and convey to the reader. But really, in order to have one single story that we're going to tell, we need to know what is your story about. That's a crucial question that every memoir has to answer. What is your story about? That will help you to take that collection of ideas and stories that you have about your life and sift through them, knowing which ones you want to include and which ones actually need to be left out. 2 ways to go about it is to, first of all, look at that whole collection and see if there's actually a theme there that runs through all your bits and pieces of writing that you can tease out, and that actually becomes the one story that your memoir is about. And every scene, every comment, every illustration, every bit of information only exists on the page because it's driving that single story forward. Or perhaps you have an idea of a story you want to tell. Then you go through that whole collection of all the bits and pieces of information you've written over the years, and you pull out the scenes and the stories that speak only to that story you want to tell. Even if you have a really fun story about your Aunt Edith that you want to convey, if it doesn't speak to this single story, it doesn't go into your memoir. Find another way, another time to include it and write about it, but not in this memoir. Your memoir needs to be very focused and speak to one single story. That's rule number 2 for Marion Roach Smith's The 3 Rules for Memoir Writing, her basic guidelines to writing a memoir. If you want to know more about her book, there is a link below for you to click on. But if you're really wanting to know more about how to determine what your story is about, I also have a link below in the description for a free 1-course video I have that walks you through determining the premise of your memoir, which essentially is, what is your story about? We look at all the components you need to know in order to have a strong premise, so that your writing can be focused, so that you can know what it's about, what to include, what to leave out, and so that every page will drive one single story forward. And once you have that answer, put it on a sticky note and stick it on your laptop, stick it on your monitor, so that as you write, you keep in mind what the story is that you're writing and what you're actually focusing on. Is your story about looking for love in all the wrong places? Is it a story about how a wallflower became a sunflower? Or is it the story of a family's struggle with schizophrenia? What is your story about? It's really important to know that. So rule number 2, know what your story is about. Choose only scenes, details, information in your memoir that speaks to that storyline so that you can move the story forward. And then the third and last piece of advice I'm going to share with you, I'm going to take from Marion Roach Smit as well, where she says, writing memoir is not supposed to be the ego trip that most people make it out to be, because the story is not about you. Your story, as you've heard me say many times on this channel, your story is about illustrating a universal truth that is of value to the reader. And that is the story that you want to drive forward. So there you have it, rule number 2, what is your story about? Find that out and stick to it. I'll see you in my next video where we're going to talk about rule number 3. And don't forget to subscribe to my free course on knowing the premise of your story so that you can know what your story is about. I'll see you in that next video.